Episode 39. Waking up is not guaranteed.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 39 of the very best podcast in the world, your source for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. And again, we're going to be talking about health. Because I had 3 shows, as I promised you yesterday, and pipeline, which I was contemplating about which would be the best one to record and broadcast today. And it turns out that among those was the episode which I had planned and called Waking Up is Not Guaranteed. And since we were talking about successful sleeping yesterday, wow, what a coincidence that we're following up with this episode. This one is a bit less funny because it involves death. And that being said, it was a story that kind of caught up with me in that somebody that I held dear passed in their sleep. And for me, it's to a degree important to get my affairs in order for the day. You know, if I've had an argument with someone, I'm usually going to try and reach out to them with a phone call and, just try to settle things, square things out. If it's too late for a phone call, that happens for me a lot. Or if I can't get a hold of the person, an email will do as well. You know, it's only got to be as little as, hey, sorry about earlier. Wasn't meant that way. Perhaps, this is how I actually meant it. Perhaps we can work it out over a phone call later. Let's say you actually die overnight. The possibilities are slim, but they're existent. Then at least that person is going to remember you as somebody fair and ethical rather than being this jerk off that dies with having a grudge on someone. And, there's a spiritual thing as well. Plus, this would probably fit in very well to yesterday's episode, Successful Sleeping, where I should have had as a concluding point to have your affairs in order when you go to bed. Simply because, there's this famous prayer, and if I die before I wake, there is actually a chance for that. And the chance isn't all too slim. A lot of people really die in their sleeps. The statistics, I looked that up when that friend of mine passed away, and they were not insignificant. Let's put it that way. That being said, what are we going to do in today's episode? There are many aspects of, getting your affairs in order. No, I'm not talking about this blah, blah bullshit about making your bed and, putting your clothes and no, not that. But there are many types of conflicts that you should resolve. And that's why I actually chose this episode. Now, I mentioned the conflict that you the beef or whatever you want to call it, you've had with others during the day, that causes sleepless nights for a lot of us because we worry about the perception others have of us if things were left the way they were and that wasn't the way we intended to be perceived. So the conflict with others is, of course, paramount to getting out of the world, but it's a lot of internal conflict that really keeps a lot of us from getting a healthy amount of sleep. And this conflict, I already kind of teased it earlier. It's about perception, right? It's about job issues that you may have. Look at the conflicts that you have with coworkers, for instance, or with your boss, and then reflect on yourself. What internal conflicts uh, are really opened up by this beef that you have with other people? I already mentioned, it's in some cases it's only about perception, in that we said something or did something which had like a different impact on the recipient than we had intended. And that's it's called, like a misunderstanding. So, as simple as that, such a clean word. We had a misunderstanding. And a lot of times it goes deeper than that, right? You say something to someone, and you don't mean it the way that they received it. That's really where it leads to internal conflict and doubt about yourself. Have you done everything correctly, towards them? Where you fair? Did you perhaps overreact? And those are all thoughts that you have, and that could actually, keep you from falling asleep successfully, as we pointed out yesterday. But it's also a shitty thing to take with you, right? Because it would be so simple to step over your shadow and send that person that you were, just a clarifying email, right? Because in the heat of the moment, things can go wrong, and, perceptions are like assholes, everybody's got one. And in that sense, it's just very important to kind of clean that up before you actually go to bed. And I think those conflict things are really the most important thing, because at the end of the day, let's say you pass away overnight and you have left your clothes lying around somewhere untidy, or your kitchen isn't cleaned up. What's the undertaker going to think of you when they come to scratch you out of your bed and put you in a box and tell you? Don't give a fuck about that. That's unimportant. It's like really people's feelings, and most importantly, your perception of the world and yourself. Most importantly, those are the things that really count. And I think I very briefly wanted to point out in this episode. Now, tomorrow is Friday, which means that we're going to be having an exercise episode. It's Exercise Friday tomorrow. And here also, I am kind of doing eeny, miny, mo on 2 different episodes, which have made it into the closer set of candidates. And I'm going to see which one it is. It's more likely than not going to have to do with sleep or waking up, because we've already had that. And we've already covered it quite extensively. So that's not going to be it. But there are other interesting things which are, well, in the pipeline. So in that sense, I forgot to spam you. I'm sorry. The spam apparatus has to be kept going, because tomorrow's Friday. So it's going to be the last day where you can actually, give 5 stars for the show on Apple Podcasts, or take the 5 seconds for the 5 stars, or take the 5 minutes for a review. Greatly appreciated, because we all want this show to go to Apple's podcast heaven, so that a lot more people get the message of health, wealth, and happiness and personal supremacy through the very best podcast in the world. Have I forgotten anything? I think not. I wish you a successful day, and a good night if you have already had your successful day. If you haven't had your successful day yet, I wish you a good night later. And in that sense, stay tuned, peace out, and check back into the very best podcast in the world tomorrow. See you soon, guys.